the fuel levy, because after he made that announcement, MPs actually debated what he had to say, raising some really interesting points. What did they tell us?
Yeah, Sally, this was a bit of a surprise. We only learned just before lunchtime that the finance minister was going to make this announcement, and of course political parties were given a preview of what he was about to say so that they could debate it. But Sally, by and large, obviously opposition parties across the board support any measure to bring relief to cash-strapped consumers, although real concerns about what that R1.50 reduction will mean in real terms, because we don't actually know by how much the fuel price is going to increase next week, Wednesday, and so this R1.50 reduction in the fuel levy could be quite negligible. But the bigger issue, Sally, that really touched a nerve across the board and stoked up that controversial oil reserve sale of 2015, because the finance minister informing the House that the sale of fuel will be used to offset what government will lose by introducing these measures. Some 6 billion rands worth of oil reserves are to be sold, and you can imagine that did not sit well with many. The DA called it a high risk and reckless. Other parties said it was a bit short-sighted. The EFF again reminding the House that no consequences were ever faced. The former energy minister at the time, Tina Jumet-Peterson, is back in the National Assembly, and she was in fact rewarded for her role and her service that she gave to that portfolio before she left. No consequences for those who lied essentially and were corrupt, claiming that that was going to be a rotation of oil stocks. And with everything happening during the lockdown, one might have forgotten that in 2020 the Western Cape High Court actually reversed that sale. And so the way in which government is going to fund this relief, as I say, hitting a nerve from many, and the finance minister saying he welcomes any other proposals that opposition parties have as to how the country can, government can restructure the price of our fuel. So that is certainly something that is going to be that we are all going to be reminded of again as these measures get debated further.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an ongoing one, because I think, as you say, we are expecting a series of increases as the crude oil price continues to be fairly unstable and aiming higher much of the time. Also today we heard questions being answered by the Deputy President, and it seemed it was dominated by our energy crisis and also our transition to renewable energy. What update did he give?
Not unusual, of course. David Mabuza often asked questions about Eskom, seeing as he leads government's task team on the country's energy crisis. He's informed the House that at least 9 coal-fired power stations will be shut down by 2035. And he's often peppered with questions. Again, the case this afternoon, concerns, particularly also from the EFF, about what closing coal-fired power stations will mean not only for the employees of those stations, but also for the towns in which these stations are based and the local economies there. But the Deputy President telling the House that government is moving swiftly, Eskom is moving swiftly in the transition to renewable energy sources. They are converting the old coal-fired stations to renewable ones. Particularly, he mentioned Kamati being converted to a solar-powered energy station. But the upshot really from the Deputy President is that the transition cannot be avoided, not only because for environmental concerns, but that Eskom's power stations are really old and ailing, and they are now reaching the end of their lifespan, and so it only makes sense that they now be converted to ones that can produce cleaner energy. And the Deputy President also saying that besides workers needing to be reskilled and upskilled, these new power stations also present the opportunity to create more jobs, and that local economies around these stations should also diversify, because they can provide in the building of these power stations, which by and large take quite a long time to build. But here's the Deputy President speaking about that transition.
Thank you very much. It was important for us to open and follow the IRP 2019, open the market, because the demand is just too huge, and currently ESCOM cannot meet the demand. As we're speaking, ESCOM has started to repurpose Komati Power Station into Renewable with the capacity of 244 megawatts and battery storage, which is a good sign from the ESCOM side. But of course, renewable energy takes long, and the projects connect low amount of megawatts into the grid. I said 292 small generators collectively have connected 187 megawatts, which is very low in terms of the need of the country. As much as we allow open the market, but ESCOM should proceed. Now, we are going to repurpose probably 6 or 7 power stations, your Camden, your Grootfontein, that have reached their lifespan.
It's going to be fascinating seeing how those power stations, coal-fired, will be converted to renewable energy. It's quite a process as well, I'm sure. The other issue tackled by the Deputy President was the importance of pushing up vaccination levels before we get our 5th wave of COVID. It seems so far away, you know. We feel like it's all over, but it's still an important issue to address, isn't it?
Yes, and he was asked at least 2 questions related to this, Sally. Members wanting to know about his discussions recently with traditional leaders and religious leaders in terms of trying to drive up that vaccination rate. The Deputy President saying government was still of the position that no one would ever be forced to receive a COVID-19 vaccine, but at the same time he said it was the only and the best protection right now that we have against the illness in preparation for a 5th wave, and he did express concern that the adult population between the ages of 18 and 34, the take-up of vaccines still reasonably low, and then the Deputy President also saying that he didn't believe that vaccine hesitancy was as much a problem as the fact that people don't have the money to travel to a vaccination site to receive a vaccine, and so really where their energy and their focus will now lie, and his collaboration with traditional leaders and religious leaders was to work on a way to bring vaccines closer to people, and the Deputy President saying that if people were presented with the facts, they could be convinced that a vaccine was a good idea, especially, and we couldn't ignore the fact, as you point out, Sally, and the Deputy President did too, that a 5th wave is looming, but the Deputy President said given the current level of vaccination in the country, we could probably expect this wave not to be as bad as previous waves when fewer, or in fact right at the beginning when no people were vaccinated. But this is his response to those questions today.
As government, we're consistent. The announcement made by the President, there's no deviation, even from these health regulations. We're still not forcing anyone to vaccinate, but we are persuading people to vaccinate because it's a good thing to do.
Not forcing, but persuading. Thank you so much, eNCA reporter Lindsay Dentlinger, coming to us from Cape Town there.